Rasulullah, 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 Muhammadur Rasulullah. Muhammad, Muhammadur Rasulullah, 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 Muhammadur Rasulullah. Ya qalbi yadhkur Ahmada, ayna al-huda mufni al-ida, barran kariman muhsinan, zahara al-ataya wal-jada. Ya qalbi yadhkur Ahmada, ayna al-huda mufni al-ida, برًا كريمًا محسنًا بحر العطايا والجدا. محمد 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 رسول الله، رسول الله، رسول الله، محمد رسول الله. يا رب صل على نبيك دائما في هذه الدنيا وباس ثاني. يا رب صل على نبيك دائما في هذه الدنيا وبعث ثاني. محمد 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 رسول الله، رسول الله، رسول الله، محمد رسول الله. صل على نبينا، صل على محمد، صل على حبيبنا، صل على محمد، صل على نبينا، صل على محمد، صل على حبيبنا، صل على محمد. محمد 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 رسول الله، رسول الله، رسول الله، محمد رسول الله. صل على رحيمنا، صل على محمد، صل على كريمنا، صل على محمد، صل على رحيمنا، صل على محمد، صل على كريمنا، صل على محمد. محمد 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 رسول الله، رسول الله، رسول الله، محمد رسول الله. رسول الله، رسول الله، محمد رسول الله. محمد محمد.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. You're listening to Faith and Freedom on Voice of Islam Radio, and this is a special edition coming to you around Jalsa Salana UK 2026, the Ahmadi Muslim community's annual convention and the largest Muslim gathering in Britain. Tens of thousands of people are gathering this weekend near Alton in Hampshire under a motto known the world over, love for all, hatred for none. My name is Azad Chaudhry, and on the panel with me today I have my co-host Khalid. Khalid, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Very happy to be here, and what a Jalsa to be marking, because not only is this year the convention isn't only a gathering of our community, there's a welcome of guests that represent every faith, which is entirely, communing us together, and also very proud to be here for celebration of Voice of Islam's 10th year in operation, and very happy to join you here as a result.
No, great to have you, and great to obviously have our audience back as well. And like you said, a milestone year for Voice of Islam Radio, 10 years since they have been running. And that's right. In this show, we are going to explore, obviously, this is Faith and Freedom, and we're going to explore the work of Dr. Caroline Hull, the National Director of Aid to the Church in Need, which is a major Catholic NGO who has been invited to Jalsa. And right now, we've got staff members at Jalsa present who are at the Human Rights and Justice exhibition within the exhibition marquee, alongside our persecution team, presenting their work on freedom of religion or belief, and also calling for greater action on freedom of religion or belief, which we'll hear about later on today. And Khalid, just a bit more information on this.
Yeah, there's a beautiful thread running through all of this as a piece of our own history that connects directly to Article 18, which is the right of freedom of religion or belief. When we defend the freedom to believe, we're not asking for a favor. We're standing on the ground that an Ahmadi Muslim or any religion that's involved should have the right to freedom of religion and belief, and it's fantastic to see so many people from so many different faiths with us at this time of year, as they are every time we roll around to Jalsa.
And we'll unpack all of it, the story of Sir Muhammad Zafrullah Khan Sahib, a series of clips from Dr. Hull, and an honest look at why this campaign matters right now, because the persecution of religious minorities, including our own community, is not history, it's happening today. So stay with us for a fascinating next 45 minutes on this show. And Khalid, before we bring in our guest, let's set the scene for anyone new to all of this. Why does a Muslim convention become the place a Catholic charity chooses to launch and promote a human rights campaign?
The simple answer is because persecution doesn't check your denomination. Aid to the Church in Need began helping Christians, refugees and persecuted communities after the Second World War. But its message today is that freedom of religion is indivisible. It's denied to one community. It's insecure for all. And the Ahmadi Muslim community knows and has lived that reality for a very long time, arguably better than anybody else.
Let's ground that. The Ahmadi Muslim community in Pakistan is the only religious community singled out by the state itself on the grounds of faith. Under a 1974 constitutional amendment, Ahmadi Muslims were declared non-Muslim in law. Then in 1984, under General Zia, Ordinance 20 made it a criminal offence punishable by up to 3 years imprisonment for an Ahmadi Muslim even to call themselves a Muslim, to call their place of worship a mosque, to make the call to prayer or to preach their faith.
Yeah, and those laws are not sitting on a shelf. They are the engine of everything that flows, the violence, the arrests, the desecrations that are happening in Pakistan. And when the state says a community is fair game, extremists hear permission. That's effectively what they're hearing.
And we'll return to the current state later, because the figures for the last 2 years are genuinely alarming. But that's the backdrop. Now to the charity at the heart of today's episode. Let's hear from Dr. Caroline Hull herself.
Yeah, and just so you know, listeners, Dr. Hull recorded these answers for us ahead of Jalsa. So over the next stress, you'll be hearing her voice directly as part of that interview.
And here's Dr. Hull's view on the origins of the charity itself. So let us listen to that.
Okay, Aid to the Church in Need was founded at Christmas in 1947 and it was founded to respond to a request by the Pope. It's a Catholic charity, so it was a request by the Pope to help the people in Germany who had been displaced and were desperate following the war. And as you can imagine, that this wasn't a very potentially popular request, and people, there was a real outpouring of food and offers of help and arrangements of things, including taking sort of trucks and turning them into chapels so that the priest could drive around and help. And from there, it grew to help support the pastoral needs of the church wherever people are suffering. Could be from poverty, could be oppression, could be extreme isolation. So we did a lot of work behind the Iron Curtain, and then we moved from Europe out to the other parts of the world. And now we operate in about 140 countries each year around the world. And everything that we do is done through the Catholic Church to help support the Christians who are suffering.
A charity born out of the ruins of the Second World War, founded to help displaced and persecuted Christians, and now working across the world.
Yeah, and that founding story really matters because it explains the instincts. This was an organization that was there for people at their most vulnerable on the basis of faith after the Second World War. So the question becomes, does that mission stay narrow or does it widen? And, we asked Dr. Hull to opine on that.
We fund about just over 5,000, between 5,000 and 6,000 projects. As I say, they are all run through the Catholic Church. The vast majority of them are to support priests, to support nun sisters, to support people who teach the Catholic faith, to build churches, to provide vehicles. We do also support interfaith dialogue. So we work, because I said, as we work in most countries, we are working also in countries where Christians are suffering oppression, persecution, discrimination, as well as in so many parts of the world where the problems are more socioeconomic or based on extreme isolation.
And there's the pivot point for this whole episode, Khalid. Communities of different faiths standing together. That's not a slogan for us. That's Jalsa in a sentence as well.
Yeah, it's very representative of Jalsa. It's representative of our community. Our community spent decades saying that defense of religion cannot be selective. You can't credibly ask for your own freedom to worship while staying silent about someone else's. And Dr. Hull and the ACN come at it from the Catholic tradition, and we come at it from ours, but we're both attempting to lead to the same destination, which is freedom of religion and belief for all.
Indeed, and let's put some evidence behind the concern. ACN produces a landmark report on this every year, so let's hear what the latest edition found in that report.
The Religious Freedom Report comes out every 2 years, and obviously, the Religious Freedom Report is, we believe it's really very, very important. Now, as I've said, we focus primarily on suffering and persecuted Christians, but the Religious Freedom Report is about the violations against religious freedom by anyone, for anyone throughout the world. So it is a general report that covers repression and persecution and discrimination of people of all faiths and none throughout the world. Our most recent edition, it's a terrible situation. What we found, our research found that it's about 5.4 billion people in the world live in countries where religious persecution and discrimination are taking place. So it's a growing phenomenon. We work more and more with it each year. So as I said, still the majority of the work that we do is pastoral, but increasingly we're working and operating in places where persecution is taking place.
So sobering findings. A report produced every 2 years rather than 1 year, but Dr. Caroline Hull stated there that 5.4 billion people are sort of impacted with restrictions on freedom of religion or belief in one way or the other. So from a report that ACN has produced for years, what is essentially it's stating is a systematic country-by-country assessment in which there are very worrying findings.
Yeah, I think what strikes me is the scale. Sometimes we talk about persecution as though it's a handful of trouble spots. The reality is the report describes that a very large share of the world's population, 5.4 billion, that is a huge number, where this fundamental freedom is under serious threat. And that's not the margins, that's the mainstream of human experience at the moment.
Indeed. So the obvious next question, what's driving it and is it getting worse? Dr. Hal gives us a fuller answer here. So let's give it room for her to give us the answer.
Well, there are a number of factors, and it does vary from different parts of the world. The biggest threat to religious freedom, our research found, was authoritarianism. So in countries where things like surveillance and the legal system and anybody who dissents in any way is suppressed, and these things are all used to control religious life and to really do what they can to eliminate religious freedom. And this drives persecution in a lot of countries, say 19, 20 countries, and discrimination. And again, persecution and discrimination we can define differently for different places. But really, it's over about 50 countries in the world where people of various faiths, minority faiths in any given country, are suffering things like fewer opportunities for employment and education. There are restrictions on marriage, or sometimes imprisonment or fines or torture or even death. So there's a big scale, and it varies from place to place, and it varies from religious majority and religious minority groups around the world. That's
Indeed.
the most important thing. Jihadist violence is another one. And again, I'm always at pains when I speak about this. As I've said, I come at this from the standpoint of a Christian charity, but I'm always at pains to point out that there are people of all minority faiths, including Muslims, who reject, who don't follow extremist ideologies, who suffer from this. And this is also, again, it's about 25 countries where people, particularly sort of across the Sahel over to Pakistan, where we can find discrimination or persecution of religious minorities as a result of jihadist violence. Nationalism, ethno-religious nationalism is causing problems in other places like India, Myanmar, the Palestine, Israel, Sri Lanka, Nepal. There's discrimination or persecution because of for minority religions because they're different from what the majority belief is. Forced migration, you'll know, minority women and girls, big problems, abuse, abduction, forced conversion, coerced marriage. This is happening with, young girls, Christian, and lots of other minorities in different places. Sometimes war or conflict that starts not even as a religious, that's not the main motivation, but religious groups will use that as a way to displace or get rid of or try to get rid of religious minorities, as the hierarchy or the institutions crumble. We can't deny in the West, in Europe, in North America, in Latin America, anti-Semitic and anti-Muslim hate crimes, are surging. And, even government responses in our country is not always adequate. And it means that there's fear of, Muslims who want to practice their faith openly and freely, and Jews who want to gather to worship.
A lot in there. Authoritarian governments, religious nationalism, extremist movements, and the sense that in many places the situation is deteriorating rather than improving, which is interesting. Khalid, living in an age where we've got access to the internet, AI, it is supposed to make the world on paper more free and more connected, but actually the ground reality is completely otherwise in some countries.
Yeah, and I want to connect that directly home, and Dr. Hull referenced a lot of topics and discussion points that we've discussed on the Faith and Freedom podcast before, and because everything Dr. Hull just described has a Pakistani chapter, our listeners may actually recognize this very instantly, and might be something that they've experienced themselves. Religious nationalism weaponized by the state, extremist movements, groups like Tehreek-e-Labbaik operating with almost entire impunity, and the trajectory, unfortunately, is getting worse, not better.
Yeah, and I think we should say for listeners, obviously, Tehreek-e-Labbaik as an organization has been banned by Pakistan, but however those extremist sentiments may still linger, and if obviously the laws still enable it, and Khalid, you're a lawyer, I'm sure you'll be able to feed into this, if laws are still enabling that environment of hate and division, then banning sort of organizations by themselves can't just be the silver bullet to the problems that have been cited by Dr. Caroline Hull. A positive step, however a long way to go to making that sort of free for all to practice their faith. And we should also put these facts on record with some hard numbers. Khalid, walk us through what the last year actually looked like for Ahmadi Muslims in Pakistan.
Yeah, and obviously I want to disclaim that some of this topic can be quite upsetting for a lot of our listeners, but it's important that we give the true reality for what the conditions are in Pakistan or have been in Pakistan. From verified reporting for 2025 and into 2026, we have to start with the most serious form of discrimination or restrictions on freedoms, which is killing, faith-based killing. So in 2025, 3 Ahmadi Muslims were killed in faith-based attacks, and another died in police custody. That sits with a wider pattern of at least 5 attempted murders and 18 recorded assaults over the year of 2025.
And these aren't anonymous statistics. Give us the names, Khalid.
Yeah, and I think, again, for listeners, it's important that we remember that these are real people. These are people who had families. These are people who were members of their community, who were positive influences on the world as a whole. And we shouldn't forget that their circumstances. In April 2025, Laik Ahmed Jima was beaten to death by a mob outside of an Ahmadi Muslim place of worship or mosque in Karachi. And the police were present and they failed to intervene. In May, Dr. Sheikh Muhammad Mahmood, who was a 58-year-old doctor, was shot outside of his workplace in Sargodha after receiving threats that were directly linked to his faith. And then a 19-year-old Muhammad Asif was killed in a targeted shooting near his home.
Doctors, community leaders, teenagers, and this follows an even bloodier 2024 when 6 members of the community were murdered.
Yeah, and almost with impunity at this point. It's case after case. Rarely is anyone ever brought to justice for these killings. Worse criminal cases are frequently opened against the Ahmadi Muslim members of the community in Pakistan and the victims themselves, rather against the perpetrators, less so victims of the assault or the attack.
Then there's assault on Ahmadi Muslim mosques and on the dead as well, the graves of the dead, the desecrations.
Yeah, so again, in 2025 alone, 21 Ahmadi Muslim mosques were desecrated, vandalized, or attacked. 13 were sealed by authorities, 6 were attacked by mobs, and 1 was completely destroyed. 13 minarets and 10 prayer niches were demolished. The very features that mark a building as a mosque, effectively, all of them are being erased from each of these places. And in August 2025, a mob of 300 attacked 2 Ahmadi Muslim mosques in Faisalabad, and they actually set one ablaze on fire.
And this was a mob that was there to, I believe, celebrate the Pakistan independence at the time, and essentially turned toward a peaceful Ahmadi-Muslim mosque and neighborhood, and did all of this, which obviously is shocking to see. And I think one thing I would also say to listeners is that these figures obviously reflect the current years. If we aggregate the figures since 2020, they go into the hundreds of mosques and hundreds of graves that have been desecrated, simply for individuals to call themselves Ahmadi Muslims in society. And crucially, much of this is done by the state or with the police standing alongside. Khalid, you've mentioned the earlier examples, but give us a bit more.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this makes it very different from normal mob violence, where mob violence may not have a state aspect to it. In Duska, a historic mosque over 70 years old, which was also built during the lifetime of Sir Muhammad Zafrullah Khan Sahib, the very man we'll actually turn to shortly, because he was a massive defender of freedom of religion and belief, was demolished in a nighttime operation by the local administration and the police in January 25. And this is in open defiance of the Lahore High Court judgment in April 2023, which ruled that the mosques built before 1984 must not be attacked under the pretext of these anti-Ahmadiyya laws that have been put in place.
And one thing I'd say is that with this specific example, which happened in Duska Sialkot in Punjab, the government did actually rebuild those destroyed bits of the mosque later on. But actually, the point is that this should not have happened in the first place. So, Khalid, we've spoken about Ahmadi Muslim mosques, we've spoken about Ahmadi Muslims being killed. What about the graves?
Yeah, so as I alluded to earlier, it's very commonplace for the Ahmadiyya Muslims' resting places to be desecrated. So since 2021, more than 421 Ahmadiyya Muslim graves have been desecrated, headstones smashed or defaced, to remove the Quranic inscriptions and the word Muslim. Even the grave of Professor Abdul Salam, which I've actually gone and seen myself, he's Pakistan's first Nobel laureate in physics, was defaced to remove that word. They won't allow that word to be reinstated on the gravestone. And they don't provide any dignity even after death. And
the arrests as well, Khalid?
Yeah, again, masses. And I apologize to our listeners, if I'm droning on about the stats, but it's important to understand the scale of the discrimination that's occurring and the restrictions against freedom of religion and belief. Over 2025, around 250 criminal arrests, FIRs, were registered against Ahmadi Muslims, many tied to nothing more than offering your Friday prayers like many of the followers today are doing. Our show is literally maybe 10-20 minutes after Friday prayers have been said here. During Ramadan in 2025, police disrupted again Friday prayers in at least 24 locations, and again in December 25, Mubarak Ahmed Sani was handed a life sentence under blasphemy provisions, in part for possession of just religious literature associated with the Ahmadiyya Muslim community.
A life sentence for his beliefs and his books?
For his faith. I don't think it was just belief in books. It was, festivals, this year, Eid al-Fitr in March 2026, which many of our listeners may have celebrated. Police across the Punjab entered Ahmadiyya mosques, forcibly removed worshippers and sealed premises in Gujranwala, Sialkot, Faisalabad and Sargodha, to stop them from practicing the most holy day. And I can't imagine, Azhar, if the police turned up at Jalsa Salana and decided to remove all of the followers here. It's really heartbreaking stuff that you can't even do the things that are not outward facing but entirely inward facing to the celebration of your own faith, and not trying to be offensive to anybody else.
And this, unfortunately, is the reality in Pakistan, where we have not been able to hold our Jalsa Salanas since the enactment of the anti-Ahmadi laws many years ago now. And you mentioned the case of Mubarak Ahmed Sani. And listeners who will be listening, I'm sure, to this show on the way to Jalsa, on the way back, might be asking, what can we be doing? And do stay on, because there is an exhibition on this in the exhibition marquee run by the Department for External Affairs on human rights and justice. And Mubarak Ahmed Sani is actually spotlighted in that exhibition. And we have postcards that you can write to the Pakistani Prime Minister as well as the UK Prime Minister calling on his release, and another current prisoner of conscience, Shiraz Mirza Sab, who is also behind bars, but we'll get on to that later on as well. Now, that's the reality Dr. Hull's report also describes in the abstract, made painfully concrete. And it's exactly why a campaign on Article 18 isn't a luxury. So let's talk about Article 18 itself, because I know our listeners might be wondering, what is Article 18? So let us hear from Dr. Caroline Hull on what Article 18 actually is and why ACN took the unprecedented step of promoting this global petition in the first place.
Article 18 is part of the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it was written just following, the horrors of the Second World War, and it reflects a sort of desire to set out a common set of rights that we all have as human beings. The committee was chaired by Eleanor Roosevelt, who was the First Lady of the United States for much of the Second World War, and I'm a big fan, of Eleanor Roosevelt. And it was adopted by the UN in 1940, the end of 1948, December. There were, 58 nations involved in the UN at that point. 48 of them voted yes, 8 abstained, and 2 didn't vote. It's not laws, and it's not a treaty. It's not legal in that sense, but it is a basis. It's a platform that has impacted, I think it's about 90 constitutions, either written or amended since the 1948, since this was adopted. So it's there, the expression of people's right to have freedom of belief. And it sits there in so many constitutions, either pick it up word for word or it underlies what they have to say about it, but it's not acted on. Sometimes it's ignored. And so our Article 18 petition is not about getting it passed. It's already been adopted. It underpins a lot of international law, the international legal framework around the world. It's already there, but it's overlooked in so many places. So what we're looking for with this petition, which will go to the UN, it will go to the UK government, it will go to various governments all over the world, to the European government, the EU, and it's about getting the conversation going and getting people to talk about it. People are so concerned about rights being trampled on in all sort of sectors of our lives today, and to me, this is the most basic one. It's your right to believe and your right to own the faith, the set of beliefs you hold dear, and at whatever choice. It's not about individual religions, because I know that the individual religions prescribe in different ways how you act out your faith when you join, all that sort of thing. That's fine. It's more basic than that. It's what we as humans bring to the table, this right we have to choose. That's what we have to offer, I think.
Great.
And that's what Article 18 is about.
Article 18, the right for freedom of religion or belief, a very fundamental right within the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Khalid?
Yeah, and I think it's worth us being quite precise for those listeners who maybe aren't as familiar with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So Article 18 was adopted in 1948. It guarantees everyone the right to freedom of thought, conscience, religion, including the freedom to change one's belief or religion, and to manifest its teaching, practice, worship, and observance, which includes missionary work. And that's actually one of the key... The concept of moral reciprocity was something that was very key for Sir Muhammad Zafrullah Khan Saab's arguments when adopting Article 18. So every element is exactly what's being stripped away from Ahmadi Muslims in Pakistan.
And the petition asks for its full enforcement, not new law, but for governments and the United Nations to actually uphold a right the world already agreed to. This is a right, Dr. Caroline Hull was saying, is already enshrined in many constitutions in the world, but actually not enacted upon. And this is what the petition is calling for.
Yeah, correct. The commitment exists on paper, but what's missing is enforcement.
Let's hear how it's been received so far. Let's hear from Dr. Caroline Hull on it.
Well, we've started out sort of plowing the part of the field that we know the best. So we've had a statement from the Catholic Bishops Conference for England and Wales, and the Scottish bishops, Catholic bishops, are also behind this. We have also, there are Anglican clerics who've also backed it, including the Bishop of Winchester, who is Bishop Mount Stephen, who was behind the Truro report on the freedom of religion or belief, and also Archbishop Angelos, who represents the Coptic Orthodox Church as well here. We have politicians who are behind this, like Lord Alton of Liverpool, is such a big voice for religious freedom around the world. And then Jim Shannon, who is an MP and chairs the APPG for freedom of religion or belief. We've also had some celebrities. Tom Holland from the rest is history has also backed it. So we're working quite hard in the Catholic sphere and the broader Christian sphere. But really, this is for everyone, and I'm so excited to be working with the Ahmadi community here, because really, I would like to millions of people should sign. Everyone should sign this, whatever your faith is, and even if you have no faith, it's about protecting that right to bring what you have as a human being to the choice of what you believe.
I should mention that the names that Dr. Caroline Hull mentioned just now, Jim Shannon, Lord Alton, Archbishop Angelos, and many others, have actually sent video messages of support for Jalsa Salana as well, which listeners can expect to see over the next coming days in support of freedom of religion or belief.
Did you say Tom Holland? Is that what, Spider-Man Tom Holland?
No. So this is Tom Holland from The Rest is History.
Right, okay.
So she did clarify that. But I think an important, celebrity, and I'm actually a fan of that show, although we're not promoting that show at this stage. But I think it shows that there is important, broad coalition of people backing this call for freedom of religion or belief, because importantly, it includes your right to change your belief, not just to believe itself. So growing support across faith lines, and now including the official backing of the Ahmadi Muslim Community UK here at Jalsa Salana 2026.
Yeah, correct. Which was announced this week. The support from the Ahmadi Muslim community. Rafiq Hayat, who's the national president of the community in the UK, said, we know only too well the suffering that follows when people are denied the freedom to worship according to conscience. And so we stand readily with all those persecuted, whatever their faith. And that's the community, putting its name alongside the ACN for this specific purpose.
And listeners can add their own name too. Anyone attending Jalsa Salana UK this year. We'll give details at the end of the programme. Now, this is where our two stories become one, because Article 18 has a very particular resonance for our community. Khalid, set this up. Who was Sir Muhammad Zafrullah Khan Sahib?
Very, very broad question. He was one of the towering figures of history in the 20th century. He obviously was an Ahmadi Muslim, but he was many other things. He was Pakistan's first foreign minister. He led Pakistan's delegation to the United Nations in the early years of the United Nations. And the early years of Pakistan. He later became the president of the United Nations General Assembly. And then a judge, and ultimately the president of the International Court of Justice in The Hague. So there's arguably no Pakistani in history who's reached a higher sort of status amongst in political circles on the world stage.
And interestingly, his fingerprints are actually on the Universal Declaration itself.
Yeah, that's right. And when I was doing research into the formation of Article 28 and the adoption of Article 28, there was a lot of references to some of the arguments that Sir Zafrullah Khan was making. So when the UNCHR was first being drafted and debated after the Second World War, George Zafrullah Khan Sahib was one of the voices at the table arguing for the right of freedom of religion, and specifically for the freedom to change one's belief, which was a very contested at the time. That the Saudi Arabian representatives actually asked for a number of amendments to remove that right. And as I stated before, the concept of moral reciprocity, that it can't just be one faith, it has to be all faiths. It can't just be protection for Muslims, it has to be protection for everyone to change their faith.
Let's mark that with the clips. First, on his election to that great international office, to set the scene.
United Nations General Assembly receives 4 new members and a new president as its 17th session convenes in New York. U.S. Ambassador Adlai Stevenson is among the veterans on hand to welcome the freshman delegates. Mohammad Zafrullah Khan of Pakistan is a favored candidate for president against a Soviet-backed delegate from Ceylon. After the balloting is completed, the office goes to Mr. Zafrullah Khan by a vote of 72 to 27. Outgoing President Moungi Slim of Tunisia announces the result, and Mr. Zafrullah Khan comes to the marble podium to take the seat he will occupy for the next year. The 69-year-old leader has seen service both in the United Nations and the Old League of Nations, and he is the only man here to have held high posts in 2 important governments. He headed India's delegation to the League of Nations and has served as Pakistan's foreign minister as well as delegate to the United Nations. A devoutly religious man, Mr. Zafrullah Khan brings a deep yearning for peace, together with skilled diplomatic art, to his new office.
An Ahmadi-Muslim elected by the nations of the world to preside over them.
Yeah, almost unanimously. We need to explore, given the context of our program, the deeper point, which is this specific role in Article 18. That this Professor Heinen Bielefeld, who himself served as a UN Special Rapporteur on freedom of religion and belief, is trying to give an explanation of what his impact, Zafrullah Khan's impact, was on Article 18. We'll hear that now.
So we are in Nuremberg, and more precisely in the Human Rights Street, as it's called. The Human Rights Street contains 30 columns representing the 30 articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the 1948 mother document of international human rights protection. This is Article 18, which deals with freedom of religion or belief. I actually like to highlight the fact that when Article 18, freedom of religion, was under discussion in the General Assembly of the United Nations, Pakistan, represented by Foreign Minister Zafrullah Khan, member of the Ahmadiyya community, insisted on the component also to change, right? To change, freedom of also changing one's belief. So from an Islamic perspective, he said the Quran gives freedom of religion or belief, and Muslims should therefore support this right. This was very controversial at the day. And so here Ahmadis can claim a degree of ownership also in the formulation of Article 18.
And this was Professor Heiner Bielefeld, who himself served as the UN Special Rapporteur on freedom of religion or belief. So I think a very poignant bit of history there, and ownership on Article 18. Khalid, you mentioned the challenges that such as Mohammad Zafrullah Khan Sahib faced in getting that across, but something that we can feel proud of, and something that we really have a stake in. So consider the irony, Khalid, and it's a bitter one.
Yeah, it's almost unbearable when you think of the context. The very country whose freedom of religion was in part articulated to the world through Zafrullah Khan Sahib, an Ahmadi Muslim, is the country today that makes it a crime for an Ahmadi Muslim to practice their religion. The man who helped write Article 18 for humanity, his own community, and was a Pakistani and lived in Pakistan, his own community now is denied its protection in his homeland. That historic mosque that was bulldozed in Daska last year and rebuilt, it was built in his lifetime.
Which feels why it's so fitting that ACN's Article 18 petition should come to Jalsa, of all places. Let's hear from Dr. Caroline Hull, reflecting on that history directly.
I think that is really inspiring. I mean, for him, as an Ahmadi Muslim, to espouse that, to own it, to live it, and what he went on to do as Pakistan's first foreign minister, and as a lawyer, obviously throughout his entire life, just to be such a fervent sort of disciple of Article 18, to be so devoted to it, and then, you know, to go on to be the president of the International Criminal Court, and then to be the president of the UN General Assembly, to have him standing there. The Ahmadi have such a stake in Article 18. And again, you know, it's a privilege to be able to work alongside the Ahmadi community.
And let's also hear why Dr. Hal wanted to bring the campaign specifically to the largest convention of Muslims here in the United Kingdom.
Well, our office, ACN, Aid to the Church in Need, our office is in Sutton. So we're not far from Morden at all. And I've had the privilege of being invited to the big compound in Morden on several occasions. And I was there at the big launch a few years ago. Was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Indeed.
And I had a fantastic evening. I got myself into the wrong queue. I think I was supposed to go in. There were guests outside the community who'd been invited, and I think I was meant to be there. And I got into the community, so I ended up in the big hall with all the women. And I think they weren't entirely sure who I was or why I was there, but I had the best time. They took such good care of me, and it was such a loving, caring environment. So that's part of my personal reason of wanting to go to Jalsa Salana. But you know, I find the sort of love for all and hatred for none, it just embodies so much about Article 18 for me. So being able to bring this here to talk, to hear some more stories. I know that there is just heartbreaking persecution that the Ahmadi have undergone and continue to undergo. So, you know, having a chance to hear some more stories, to meet people, and to encourage as many people as possible, as I said earlier, to sign the petition, but also to get it out there and get people talking about it and spread the word. So that's what I'm looking forward to doing.
And you know, what a powerful message and image that is. You know, the extremists want a world of walls, and it's sort of my faith against yours. And the ACN and their presence at Jalsa and all of the members of the community here offers what is partnership models, which is the exact opposite. Differences held together by a shared commitment to dignity that answers to hatred. So it's right there in that message.
And after documenting so much suffering, the reports, the persecution year after year, it would be easy to despair. So we asked Dr. Hal finally, before we close the show, the most important question of all: what gives her hope? Here's her answer, and we'll let it run.
What gives me hope? I mean, I've done a lot of traveling for ACN, so I've been to a lot of places. You know, again, this would be visiting primarily persecuted Christians, but it's the depth of faith and the love and the forgiveness that people who are persecuted for their religious faith or persecuted for their sets of beliefs, what that they demonstrate is just, you know, it enriches my own faith. And when I started working for Aid to the Church in Need in 2014, one of the first things I did was go to Malta because we were opening a new office there. And there were a lot of other employees from around the world, staff of ACN, but also a number of clerics from the suffering and persecuted church. And I met a Coptic Catholic bishop from Egypt, and he said something that I have never forgotten. And I asked him what it was like to be the bishop, a Catholic bishop in a part of the world where Christians suffered. And he said to me, "Caroline, I am the bishop of a persecuted church, and my churches are full." And I think that, you know, that was said in a Christian context, but I'm sure it would ring true for anyone of any faith, that, you know, the fact that that sort of persecution, that sort of suffering strengthens people, it offers people hope, it gives people the opportunity to witness for those of us who live in parts of the world where we're not suffering like that. And so that's what gives me hope. And also the fact that we can work together, not to give people voices, they have voices, but to amplify their voices, to make sure that they know that they're heard, and that there are people out there who are praying for them and offering them hope and walking in solidarity with them.
So let's bring it home, Khalid. If a listener takes one thing from this hour, what is it?
That, you know, freedom of religion and belief is not a Christian cause or a Muslim cause. It's a human one. And as Dr. Hall put it, it's defended best when communities of different faiths stand together. if you believe that, this is your moment to prove it with your signature.
So here's how. Aid to the Church in Need, ACN, are running the Article 18 campaign, calling for the full enforcement of that fundamental right worldwide. You can sign it in two ways. Go to change.org and search for Protect the Right to Believe, a global call for religious freedom, or visit the ACN website directly at acnuk.org, where the Article 18 petition is linked on the front page. And one also thing is, Khalid, at Jalsa itself, there is also an opportunity.
Yeah, and if you're able to make it out here to Alton, Hampshire this weekend in what is sweltering heat, but we persevere, you can go and find the Human Rights and Justice exhibition, which is run by the External Affairs Department for the Ahmadi Muslim community here. Dr. Hull and the ACN team will be there in person. Sign the petition, have the conversation, and take the spirit of solidarity home with you, as well as all of the celebrations and well wishes of people here at the Jalsa.
And additionally, that exhibition will also have two postcards, as I mentioned, of current Ahmadi Muslim prisoners of conscience, Mubarak Ahmed Sani and Shiraz Mirza, which you can also sign to the UK PM and Pakistani PM to call for their release. And let's leave listeners with the words that could caption everything we've discussed, the motto of our Jamaat, of our community, that inspires the whole endeavour: love for all, hatred for none.
Words to build a world on.
We've come to the end of this special episode. I'd like to thank Dr. Caroline Hull and everyone at the Aid to the Church in Need, my co-host Khalid, our production team, and to you, our listeners. I'd like to mention that the views and opinions expressed by the panelists are their own and do not necessarily represent the views and outlook of Voice of Islam Radio. For feedback or for more information or to listen to this episode again, please log on to www.voiceofislam.co.uk. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all.
You're listening to the Voice of Islam Radio, broadcasting on DAB and via the internet 24 hours a day.
محسنا ظهر العطايا والجدى يا قلبي يذكر أحمدا عين الهدى مفني العدا برا كريما محسنا بحر العطايا والجدى